Hello and welcome everyone, and welcome to 2026. It's Susanne here, and I'm with Margaret de Santos. We're going to do another Ask a Mentor. Well, it's a little bit different to an Ask a Mentor, but it's like a flash webinar today in that we're just doing it almost on the spur of the moment because we've both been thinking about the amount of project managers and particularly super experienced ones that are out of work and been out of work for a while. And it sort of led to a bit of thinking around what are the key skills of a project manager and what what are the ones that are transferable? So how transferable are they, in fact? How are you, Margaret?
I'm well, thank you, Suzanne. Thanks for asking. Happy New Year to you. Happy
Thank you.
2026.
Yes, it's going to be good, I think.
Yeah,
I think it'll be good.
yeah,
Anyway, Margaret, um, so we'll sort of get straight into this, right? But it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think that a project manager has heaps of skills, and
yes.
a lot of them we think are our superpower, like the ability to plan, to identify risk, all of those key things that we do. And not everyone does it well, but the ones that do it well do it really, really well. But how do we translate those into something else that, maybe if we want to change careers or we want to go to a side hustle, right? Um, so one of the things that you've said is that we already have them. So can you talk a little bit about that?
That's right. And some of these superpowers that we already have include being able to have a vision in terms of what we're going to do, how we're going to, and then how we're going to plan that. We have to collect our thoughts and kind of bundle them together in like bundled groups. We have to be a people pleaser, a people person. We have to understand our stakeholders. We have to be able to talk to them, understand them, include some of their thoughts into the decision making. And obviously, project management, we do stuff. We don't just talk about it, we get
No,
stuff done.
we get stuff
So,
done.
yeah, so that means that we are change enablers in a lot of things. So that's the reason.
Yeah, look, we've already got a lot of them. And
Mm,
some of the ones that I sort of highlighted, which I always think are key, right, are tenacity. And you sort of
mm,
touched on this. We get things done and we just
mm,
really keep going and pushing through.
mm,
We have a purpose. We sort of know we should know what the purpose is of the project,
mm,
right? If we don't know, we should be able to find out. And we scope. Our communication skills are often very good. I say often because in the earlier days of project management, they weren't that good. Project managers didn't really have those comms skills that they should have had. And I think that was because a lot of project managers came from a technical um, background. Planning, we should be really good at planning. We should be good at financial management. That's another story, though, because I don't find that everybody is.
mm,
Organisation, and we have organisational skills, but we also have a breadth of knowledge, usually across an organisation. We should know how to manage teams. We are or should be aware of change management and how that works. And we generally have a technical or business um, management bent. So we tend to sort of know where, where we're going and what the organisation looks like. So if we were looking at this in a real world scenario, for example, um, I don't know whether you want to talk across this, Margaret, but this is where I think it's transferable. So those things that I talked about directly transfer to other attributes.
that's right. And the attributes can be applied basically in any industry. It's agnostic. It can be applied in any area of our lives that where we start something and then we finish it. And it could be anything. It could be a
Yep.
do-it-yourself project. It could be a holiday. It could be a side hustle like you mentioned before, and some of those transferable skills can be up and, implemented and basically used to do the side hustle as well as the project management,
Yeah.
that we're actually being asked to do. And so, when you talk about tenacity, it is something that needs to be done because it costs money to set up a project. It costs money and time to have a project team set up. And so I guess the driver is that we have to try and get it started and done and finished. And so that's why, the project managers get stuff done as well. There's a vision, communication. You're basically got to be able to say what you're doing. You got to say what you're doing now, and you've got to say what you've done. So it's very simple, but
Yeah.
sometimes that doesn't happen. And then the teams are none the wiser, and they think, what's happening? We don't know. We don't know what's going on. There's crickets. There's
Yeah.
no one's doing anything. We haven't heard anything, and so that's why communication is so important. And then the financial aspect, and like you said, a lot of people may not have that financial knowledge,
Yeah.
but cost and budgets are one of the things that is part of the project management
Mm.
toolkit. It's
Yeah.
part of the project management skill set. And so that is definitely something that, you've got to make sure that you know how to do.
But it's
You've got,
not, that one's not necessarily transferable, is it? See? So I came to project management out of finance. So
mm,
for me, I could have probably gone back into finance early on. And in my projects, I would build, really big budgets and I do the whole forecasting and all of that stuff.
mm,
But for a lot of project managers who are doing that forecast, well, they're not even doing forecasting, a lot of them, but they're putting together a budget or a budget has been put together for them. They're not really, they don't really have a transferable financial skill. Might be one of the few that we don't necessarily have as transferable.
yeah, but it's actually a key one that is part of the project management knowledge. Budget
Yes.
is definitely something that is there, and they really should know how to do it in terms of setting up a budget and also tracking and
Yep.
then reporting on the budget and how we're doing, how much we've spent, how much we've got left, and because really they're accountable to the sponsor.
They are. But if we were
So,
talking about project managers' skills being transferable to another career or to a side hustle or starting your own organisation, very few organisations are going to say, well, you've done all this project management, you've managed these huge projects. Okay, well, I'll take you on as a financial person in the organisation. Um, Certainly not as an accountant or anything like that. So it's not necessarily transferable. That's sort of what I'm talking about. It's probably one of the few. But if you're developing your own company, then it's transferable. It's absolutely transferable then.
absolutely transferable because you would be keen on making sure
Yep,
that you're within your budget, that you haven't overspent,
yep.
that you're looking at costs, making sure you get the best price for the job and things like that. So it definitely is something that is a good skill to have, and it's something that,
Mm,
especially like you said, if you've got your own company,
yeah,
you would definitely have that skill that to use in
it's
your
a
own,
key.
and it's a key.
It's a key one. And I'm not sure what other sort of roles that would transfer into. I mean, procurement. We've talked a bit about procurement.
Yeah.
And potentially that would be something that would be transferable into procurement because you're
Mm.
managing those large contracts. So that's sort of what we're trying to think about in this discussion. What's transferable to something else? Because we all have the experience. I mean, like I just said, I came from finance into project management. But we often come from something into project management, but not often go back the other way.
Yes, and that's interesting because I actually started in financial as well. Like I
Yep.
had done an associate, in accounting. I was an associate
Yeah.
accountant. So that's where I started, my career. So, for me, financial budgets and also monitoring and, looking at actuals against budgets was
Yeah.
quite natural for me and something that just was quite easy for me to actually, implement in projects.
A
So,
bit the same for me,
mm,
you know. And you touched on people management. And in my experience, as being a previously being a CEO, not all CEOs have that people management skill like we have to usually have in project management. And the other key one here is change management, understanding the change and communicating that to your market. Um, and not everyone has that skill either. It's, these are interesting skills.
yeah, that's right. And in terms of people management, I've found that a lot of instances where project managers may have been promoted and because they had the knowledge or the technical skill set, but not necessarily the people skill set.
Mm,
And, in terms of project management, you need to be charming, you need to be able to influence your stakeholders, you need to be able
yep,
to put forward your case. And so it's really important to be able to talk, communicate, understand, empathize with your customer,
yep,
empathize with your stakeholders, so that then you're able to influence the people, stakeholders, customers, senior execs, steering committee, and other stakeholders. So,
yep. Absolutely. And while we're talking about that, I think the change management concept is really important because, and we're going to be talking about this on the 22nd as well,
mm,
is change management taking over.
mm,
15 years ago, you had to battle to get a change manager. Your stakeholders would look at you and go, "We don't need one. They just
mm,
cost money."
mm,
Um, and so most of us, particularly in business transformation, develop those skills to do that ourselves to make sure that the transformation
mm.
occurred. Um, so I'm just wondering, are there change managers that are going into project management, and are there project managers going into change management? And I do know of some that can do both, but is it a transferable skill? That's the thing, the change management part.
Yeah. So when I first started, because I started as a project analyst and then I went into project management and project and
Yep,
running my own projects. And at the time, we had to understand what change management was. We had to understand about training plans, about communication plans, about doing those things ourselves, and it
yep,
became part of the project management. I think as the complexity in projects has increased, and also a lot of organizations may do huge transformation projects in terms of reorganizing the org chart.
yeah,
It may not necessarily be where you've got to actually have a project manager in place where you're actually changing something like technology or something like that,
mm,
but you're actually just changing roles within the
yep.
organization. And therefore, really, a change manager is required in that instance because it's a very huge and very
It's a bit, yeah,
specialized.
it is specialised. Having said that, I'm not a change manager and I've done those org chart things and done those changes
Yeah,
working with HR or the people
yeah.
area as well. Um, but if we're thinking about this skill, particularly change and comms, right? So if you're building your own organisation or even this with the PM clinic, right? I've got all of those skills that I've brought with me from finance background and then from all that project management. So I can write a comms plan. I can identify who my stakeholders are, because these are skills that we learn as project managers. And that's what this next slide is talking about. You know, translating project management skills into real life examples, developing a concept. You know, say you're building your own business. That's the business case or a
Mm,
concept brief. Identifying your potential customers. We talked about this before. Stakeholder management. Now,
mm.
whilst that's now a change management sort of specialty, it wasn't before, and still project managers need to understand stakeholder management for sure. Building your plan and strategy, you know, if you're doing your own business, so that's your budget, risk assessment, schedule, deliverables management, to name a few. Designing your presence, and that's the comms management, marketing design, storytelling. You know, because as managers, we've got to have that presence, haven't we? We've got to say, well, this is actually what our project is. And then articulating your value, which I would think is like benefits management. But if we sort of look at those things now, Margaret, and think about, well, what are the transferable skills in all of that? You can't sort of say to someone, well, you know, I'm really good at benefits management, so therefore I should be in this other career. It's a little bit harder than that, isn't it?
In terms of the value and the benefits, and it might be that you're, in a position, if you're starting your own company, that you're actually, generating revenue, or you might be, I mean, another thing that you might be doing is saving costs. So
Yeah,
there's different things that you can actually bring in to transfer in anything that
yeah,
could be that's the value that you bring, or that it may not bring revenue, may not bring save costs, but you're basically doing a really good thing to the community, or you're doing something that's beneficial to make people happier, or
yeah,
a well-being kind of benefit.
yeah.
And so that's a different sort of benefit. But there are lots of ways in real life that you can, transfer some of these skills, not just, necessarily having, your own company, or, doing something that's specialized from project management.
And you talk about this in the example that you've given about,
Yeah, so I've brought a
yeah,
real life example because I thought people can probably understand and relate to this,
yeah,
especially if they decide, for example, they're going to do a home improvement and they're going to do it themselves, and and they decide that they're going to paint their lounge room and they're going to do it themselves. So when you start out, you normally plan out, okay, we're going to do we're going to do the lounge room. We might have a feature wall, or we might just do it all one color. We might, and then so that's deciding, what we're going to do and how we're going to set it up. And then you might need to prepare and plan. And so to
yeah,
do that, you might have to move a few objects around in the room. You might need to cover them up so that there's no paint splatter. And and you may have to then, before you decide on the color, decide as a family or decide with your partner, what color scheme you're going to use for the
mm,
lounge room. And then you're going to plan out each step. So you might do one coat, and then, or you might put you know, a base, then you do the first coat, and you might decide then to do a second coat, but you've got to wait maybe a few hours for the first coat to dry before putting in your second coat. And then you've got to think about the risks as well when you're
yeah.
doing planning this out and you're deciding to do it yourself.
Best
You
put
have
something on the floor to cover up the carpet. Yeah,
Yes, that's right. So you might have to
yeah,
make sure that the paint tins are not in the way,
yeah,
and that it's not a trip hazard. And you might have to wear protective clothing or old clothing so you don't ruin your outfit, because you might have to end up throwing it out if it gets paint splatter.
mm,
And and then in terms of cost, and that's something that you mentioned before, that it may not necessarily people might not think it's transferable. But if you've decided to paint the lounge room, there's a cost associated with painting the lounge room. And
Yeah.
so you've got enough paint tins to paint the lounge room, not to paint the whole house, which is a different cost altogether.
Yeah.
And so that's why, and that's scope and cost, and also within the boundaries of just getting the lounge room done. So that's just a
Yeah.
real life example of something that people can use and transfer it to anything in their life.
Yeah. And then look, it sounds simple, right? The
Yeah,
example that you've given, it sounds really simple. But what we're trying to demonstrate here is project management is all encompassing really for life. Everybody is a project manager. Some people are better at it than others. Some people, like us, make a profession out of it. But the skills themselves are transferable. And we talked then a little bit about risk management and sort of trip hazard and things like that. Um, if you're a project manager and you're looking at changing your career and going into something else and you want to know what your transferable skills are, I think what we're saying is you have the tools already as a project manager to identify those. You can actually identify them. You can actually plan where you want to go and probably what your transition is. So just in that example, potentially you might want to go into work health and safety as a different career, right? Now you
that's
may
right.
have to do some more study or something, but a lot of the skills that you already got, like you mentioned risk management, you've already got.
Mm,
And so they do start to become a good story for other careers. So I think that's just what we're talking about here in giving these examples. Now, Margaret, we also were touching a little bit on the side hustle and
yeah.
using some of that creativity that we've talked about before in project management.
Exactly. And so some of the different types of roles that people may decide to do as a side hustle as well as their project management role would be advisory and coaching. And that would be that you may do one-on-one coaching with people that, are wanting to go into project management or that are in project management, but they're very green at it and or they're very
Yeah,
junior at it and they want to be able to, increase their skill set, increase their knowledge. And so that's another different, you know, pathway of actually, going into and using your project management tool set. And another
mm,
one would be that you create digital products, and that might be tools, that might be like a risk plan or a training plan or a dashboard to enable, project managers to be able to do their work comfortably. And you can actually then use that tool set and basically share it with other project
yeah,
managers or other people that may need it. There might be playbooks or prompt libraries for AI, especially if you're, wanting in terms of project management specific skills. What sort of prompts you're going to ask, your artificial intelligence. Another one might be that you do YouTube or podcasts like
like this,
this.
yeah,
Yes. And you may be asked as a speaker or a facilitator in different events, like I have, and I've done emceeing as well. And so
yeah,
that's another way of being able to use your project management skills. And other things might be that you might launch a book or you might help others with
exactly.
their books, and that's specific to project management or PMO support, and be able to assist with that. And I know that other project managers actually, as a side hustle, they actually teach at night at
Mm,
universities
yep,
and also at TAFE or colleges.
yep.
And so that's another way of basically using a side hustle as well as project management.
Yeah, so I've done a lot of those things too. I actually taught, would you believe it, hairdressers how to set up their hairdressing salon. I had
Wow.
business background as well, and
All
I'd worked
right.
in retail, but I'd worked as a project manager. So I did that at the TAFE. So I was asked to teach them. I did that for a little while. And then I ran programs for the recruitment industry. This was a while ago. And if you're out there watching and you're in the recruitment industry, please get in touch with me. I'd love to do these again to help recruiters understand what project managers actually do and how
Mm.
to recruit for them, because that now seems to be lost again. It really does seem to be lost again, and we've talked about this a few times.
Yeah.
So, yes, if you're out there and you're watching recruiters, I've got a program just for you to run across your teams. So, Margaret, I think in wrapping this up now today, what are some of the takeaways that you have got for people around these transferable skills?
I think in a nutshell, don't lose heart or don't think that you're, not worthy of being able to do anything else. There are a lot of skills and a lot of transferable skills that project managers have that they can
Yeah,
use in anything. It could be in real life examples, like I mentioned, or it could be side hustles, like we just touched on, in terms of training, in terms of tool sets, in terms of
yeah,
coaching, in terms of mentoring, podcasts, YouTubes. And some of these, skills are tenacity, basically planning, scoping, communicating,
yeah,
organizing, talking, understanding the budgets and actuals against those budgets, change management, that is training,
yeah,
basically communication. And there is, sometimes a lot of project managers are wanting and asked to be able to understand the lingo and the acronyms of the different industries.
yeah,
And that's what you touched on about, understanding the business and the knowledge
yeah.
there. So, but then, you might actually transfer into that sort of business if you understand a lot about the business, and it could be something else. It may not necessarily be project management because
Yeah,
you understand a lot about that business.
yeah.
There are so many things. And like I
There
mentioned, the
are.
do it yourself, if you
Yeah,
decide you start to plan out and you want to do your own painting, and even if you don't want to do your own painting, but you decide that you want to get a painter, that's procurement. You you
that's
are
right.
you are basically obtaining all the different quotes and costs associated with three different, specialist painters,
Yep,
and you then decide which one you want to go with. So absolutely transferable anywhere, anytime,
anywhere,
anyhow.
anytime. In real life and into other careers, we've sort of highlighted a few things. There are plenty more. If you're out there and you're wondering how you can change your career or change your life, you've been a project manager all this time, and we have the micro consult um, program on at the moment for January. So there's two types. If you book in January, you get the January price, which is very, very cheap actually, for a 30-minute consult to start to look at your skills and your CV in a different way. So for highlighting those things. Now, both myself and Margaret are here. If you want to reach out, the details will be um, in the description below. And please, just a reminder that Margaret does not work full time for the PM clinic. She is out there, she's available for roles, but she kindly does this every month. Please subscribe. The other micro consult for January is if your project is in a mess and you just really need some fresh eyes on it. And as you can see, people like Margaret have absolutely got the skills to hone in on all those things. So we're here. It's January. We're off and running for a new year. I think, Margaret, what we might do is another session a little bit later about a project manager actually transitioning into a full-time role, because that is a little bit different if you've always been or mostly been a contractor. And when we started the conversation, I talked a little bit about, you know, a lot of people go into owning their own company or their consulting company, and they've been project managers or technical people. They are different skills. There are some that are transferable, but there are some differences. So we might do another session on that. Excuse me. Did you have anything else to add, Margaret?
No, just like and subscribe the Project Manager Clinic.
Yep. And that would be fantastic. Sorry about my coughing. Have a fabulous project day, everyone.